presidents rely pretty heavily on their secretaries of state. And you say, well, I thought the president, I like to think of the president as just dealing with issues here at home. Sometimes we put too much focus on countries and nations abroad. And I would agree, but I would also say that secretaries of state can make things easier at home as well. I didn't really realize just how important this position of a Secretary of State was until I started looking at some things this week and realized people like Elihu Root, who was the Secretary of State under Teddy Roosevelt from 1905 to 1909, or a little after that, he was someone who really made America into the world power that we are today. The influence that we have over different nations and the reason that we have such a booming economy worldwide was not accidental, it was intentional. And it was the Secretary of State, Elihu Root, who actually did that. Fascinating figure, fascinating person, a believer who really wanted to use his giftings and inhabited a lot of different positions. If you look at this man, Elihu Root, just really helped a lot of different, he was a part of Democrat and Republican because he was just so knowledgeable and just understood the way that things go. But he was someone who really set the stage for good decisions later on because of the work that he did. And again, there are certain things that secretaries of state do that help later on, so the president doesn't have to think about that. And even things that aren't really fully understood at the time. Famously, William Seward, who was Lincoln's Secretary of State, was instrumental in purchasing Alaska. And it was called Seward's Folly for so many years because, well, why did we bought this piece of land that's so far removed from us? And then, of course, when the Cold War came, we were really glad to have this piece of property. And so their Secretary of State, that position is not unimportant. There have been 6 Secretary of States that have later become president, and many of them who ran for president as well. So it's a very important position. Now, thinking about the president and the people that he puts around him underscores the idea that we are social people and that we are really dependent on other people for help. That we don't expect even the president as the head of the executive branch to be working totally alone, but to be working in concert with others. And the same thing is true for us. We need others in our lives. Caleb and I have been talking about this epidemic of loneliness and what that means. And something I was listening to recently said it's not so much even that there is an epidemic of loneliness, but that we don't need other people. That's the real problem. It's not that we're lonely and we want other people. It's that we need other people, but we filled our lives with so much that we don't feel the need. It's like someone who's hungry, but they don't have, like they're starving to death, but they don't have any hunger that motivates them to eat. And so we're losing this piece in our society, and that's really important to understand. We are social people. This is not just an American phenomenon. This is the way fundamentally that God made us, to need others. But one of the reasons that people have disconnected is that while having relationships can bring great joy, being around other people can also bring a lot of hardships and a lot of troubles. Some of the things that you deal with the most, some of the greatest heartaches in your heart, in your life, have to do with people, don't they? Right, because if something in your house breaks, you can just buy another one. It might be a pain, you can fix it, you have to do all this stuff, but it's not the heartache that people can bring. And so there's this kind of two-edged sword with that. We don't let everyone in. When you say we're around people, we say we get to choose kind of the people that we let be a part of our life. That's what we call friends, those who we are attached to. And hardships often reveal that level or reality of friendships. Have you ever had a friend that you thought, we are just such good friends, they're going to be with me, and then something happened where all of a sudden you realize that kind of the mask was off and you thought, oh wow, that's not there at all. Or somebody that you thought on the other side didn't really care that much, but in a hard moment showed up for you and that really cemented your friendship. Have you had people like that in your life? I want to talk about the kind of people that God brings into your life when you're going through a trial, because God knows that we need people, and God brings those people in, and it's really important not only to recognize that, but also to be that for other people. I know. I asked once, and I've never forgotten, I asked once in a church service, how many of you would consider yourself introverted? And almost every hand went up. So I don't know if that's a northern climate thing or just the kind of people that are coming to First Baptist Church. But there is this temptation to kind of just close in. And maybe it's because we have 7 months of winter and we just, we're all in our houses. We don't see people. But whatever, the southern hospitality, oh yeah, because it's warm and you see people and you don't really want to be indoors. But anyway, all that to say, see, there you go, Caleb. I do it. All that to say, we need people and God brings people into our lives. So we're going through the life of David. We read already about how Absalom mounted an insurrection. We've been focusing kind of on Absalom. He was in exile. He killed his brother. He was in exile. He was brought back. And then last week we looked at how he kind of mounted this insurrection. And then the camera of the story, as it were, the pen writer turns back to David and his response. And so in verse number 13, there came a messenger to David saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom." Now, the Bible doesn't give us his response either here or in a psalm about how he took that news. But understand, Absalom has turned the hearts of the people of Israel to him and away from you. And now you have a decision to make. And so in verses 14 and 15, he decides to flee. Verse 14, David said unto all his servants that were with him in Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, for we shall not else escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring evil upon us and smite the city with the edge of the sword." And the king's servant said unto the king, "Behold, thy servants are ready to do whatsoever my lord the king shall appoint." David does not want this battle or this war in Jerusalem. He doesn't want to destroy what's there. Maybe he has a faith that God will bring him back and he doesn't want to destroy it. That's what a lot of people do. They just go into the city and they say, "I'm going to hunker down." And Jerusalem, if you think about it, is a very strategic place. It's very hard to attack. So it would have been a really smart choice. But David cares about God's city and says, "I'm not going to do this. Let's leave. Let Absalom come and we'll fight this fight another day." Besides the fact that he just needs time to kind of regroup and figure out what he's going to do. So David and his family leave. This is a hardship. This is a trial. He's leaving the security that he knows. His son is after him and his life is in danger. And in that moment where he's desperate, we of course know the end of the story. So for us, the stakes aren't that high, but for David, he doesn't know what's going to happen. And so as he leaves, verses 16 and 17 talk about him leaving. This is a valley for him. He goes out of the city and he goes into this valley so that he can go, and he's going to go out in the wilderness. Look at verse 16. The king went forth and all his household after him. The king left 10 women which were concubines to keep the house, and the king went forth and all the people after him and tarried in a place that was far off. Skip down to verse number 23. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. Verse 30, David went up by the ascent of Mount Olivet, and wept as he went up, and had his head covered, and he went barefoot. And all the people that was with him covered every man his head. They went up, weeping as they went up. And so this whole chapters 15 and 16, it's kind of an amazing thing to think about. There's this kind of everything's kind of going really, really fast, and then it goes really, really slow, where there's this progression. And just pay attention when the Bible does that. When the things that the Bible puts a spotlight on, you say, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, I don't know, but that's our joy to find out. That's our joy to say, well, why did God leave this here? Because he could have just said, and David left Jerusalem. That's it. Instead, he gives us 5 different people that David meets as he's leaving the city. So 5 people you're going to meet in the valley. When you're going through a trial, who are the people that you're going to meet? Whether God sends them or not, you're going to meet some of these people. So let's look at them, and I think this is how we make application. First of all, we're going to look at the loyal friend here in chapter 15, verses 18 through 22. He says in verse number 18, verse number 18, and all his servants passed over on beside him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men which came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. And one of these people was a guy in verse number 19 called Ittai the Gittite. Now, if you were a Gittite, that meant you were from Gath. Where's Gath? Gath was one of the 5 major cities of the Philistines. Do you know anyone else who was from Gath? Big tall guy, spear, loudmouth. Yeah, Goliath was from Gath. And now all these people are here with David, the guy that killed their champion. And yet in some way they've decided to be with David and to be with the host. Be with the host of God and the people of God instead of back in Philistia. We don't know if they're believers, but they're there serving under David. And David sees this guy, Ittai. Now, Ittai was a great leader among this group of the Pelethites and the Cherethites, who were these Philistine adjunct kind of people, but at least the Gittites. And he was there, and he says, listen, you should really go back home. Verse number 19, the king said to Ittai the Gittite, wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to thy place and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger and also an exile. Whereas thou camest but yesterday, should I this day make thee go up and down with us? Seeing I go whither I may, return thou and take back thy brethren. Mercy and truth be with thee. He says, Ittai, this isn't your fight. You don't need to be here with me. You should go back to Jerusalem and serve under the king, be there. You should go back to Gath. I don't have anything to give you. Now, I thought about this a lot this week, and why would he say this? And I think part of it is that a lot of these guys were mercenaries. So maybe David's kind of saying, listen, I can't pay you for this expedition. I don't know how this is going to go. So it would be just better for you to go back. You know, I can't ask you to come out into the wilderness. I can't ask you to help me fight this fight. This is my fight. This is my problem. I caused it. And Ittai, I think you should just go. Don't be here. I'm giving you permission. I'm giving you my blessing to go. You don't have to do this. You don't have to fight here. But look at what verses 21 and 22 say about Ittai. Ittai answered the king and said, as the Lord liveth, and as my lord the king liveth, surely in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. So David said to Ittai, go, pass over. And Ittai and the Gittite passed over the river and going before him, and all his men, all the little ones that were with him. He brought everybody with him. So here's this picture of a loyal friend. Later, Ittai will be one of the 3 generals who fight in David's army against Absalom. He is one of the 3 great men who are fighting David's battles. Again, he didn't have to. But as a loyal friend, he said, I'm here with you. You're in this valley, and I'm going to be here with you. And I love that phrase, whether life or death. Loyal friends are really, really hard to find. Ones that are really trustworthy and committed. And it takes time to find those. I understand all of us have people that we connect with right away. And those people, it's easy to get along with them. It's easy to be friends with them. And those are wonderful relationships. But let's all admit, those aren't generally the people that we're going to call when we're having trouble. Those aren't the people that we call in trials. That takes time. It takes a trust. It takes a confidence that I can be vulnerable with this person and that they're not going to blow me up. They're not going to say, oh man, you're the worst person ever. Because we talk about things in our friendships that, man, it really make us look bad. And our friends love us anyway. Not that they're okay with everything we do. We're not looking for just yes men friends, but those that we can really say, hey, this is something I'm going through, and they say, it doesn't matter, I'm with you through all of this. It's hard to find because everybody wants their own way. Friendships anymore have become very pragmatic. Sure, I'll be your friend. What can you do for me? And that's not a loyal friend. A loyal friend says, it doesn't matter. I'm not thinking about what you can do for me. I just want to be committed to you and to our friendship. Circumstances can't change true friendship. They can only improve it. I don't know about you, but if you've had some friends that you've gone through things with them and they've gone through things with you, and that really has kind of heated up and tested and forged that friendship into something really strong. Because you know, hey, they were with me through some really tough things, and I'm going to be that for them now as well. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Friendship like this is really a gift from the Lord. Proverbs 27 verse 9 says, ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. God calls us to be loyal and committed friends. I want you to kind of take stock of your friends. Do you get a lot of phone calls from people who are in trouble and they say, there's one person I know I can call. I know one person that I know I can talk to, and I can put my burdens on them, and they're not going to think badly of it. They're not going to be like, oh, I don't really have time to hear your nonsense. I don't really have time to be burdened right now. Listen, I care about you, but I really can't take this on right now. I understand we have friends like that, but do you have any friends that are really depending on you, that really in those moments think, hey, that's the one that I need to call to lean on? They can help me with this. That was Ittai the Gittite for David. We got to be thankful for those godly friends that God's put in our life. The next is the quiet support. So as David is leaving, all of a sudden he sees some people coming with him. Absalom's not there yet, but he sees some people coming with him. And so notice here we're in chapter 15, verse 24. And lo, Zadok, lo means, hey, look, Zadok also and all the Levites were with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God, and they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had done passing out of the city. And the king said unto Zadok, carry back the ark of God into the city. If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and his habitation. But if he thus say, I have no delight in thee, behold, here I am. Let him do to me as seemeth good unto him. The king said it also unto Zadok the priest, art not thou a seer? Return into the city in peace, and your two sons with you, Ahimaaz thy son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will tarry in the plain of the wilderness until there come word from you to certify me. Zadok therefore and Abiathar carried the ark of God again to Jerusalem, and they tarried there. It's wonderful to have a friend like Ittai who says, I'm going with you. But it's also good to have friends who will say, listen, I don't know exactly what to do, but I will be that quiet support. I will be here when there's a need. They want to show the king that they are with him. And so they go, verse 24, they bring the ark of the covenant of God. Maybe they think, man, this doesn't belong with Absalom. He doesn't care at all. And man, maybe he'll just even turn this into something else, and we want to protect that. And so let's take the ark of the covenant of God. We're going to go with David. I'll talk about maybe what they were thinking in a little bit. But David tells them, no, go back and wait. He says, if God is pleased with me, he'll bring me back, and I'll get to see the ark of the covenant. I'll get to worship here again. But right now, I don't know, and I don't want this right now. Go back and wait. This is the church. This is represented by the people that you're sitting with right now. The people that maybe you haven't developed that strong relationship with them yet. Maybe you're working on that. You come to church and you're looking forward to seeing somebody, and you're building those relationships. That's good. That's great. I think if your best friends you find in the church, that's a wonderful thing. I think that's great. But if that's not the case, and there are people that are just kind of here tangentially, they're sort of connected with you, but they're sharing your burdens. When we say, when I say the Olsons are really struggling right now, and everybody in the church, whether they really know them that well, and we're not really friends, it doesn't matter in the church. We say, well, we love you, we care about you, we want to support you and lift you up. That's what these two are. They're saying, we can't go with you. We can't do all the things that you can do. We're not going to enter the fray, but we're going to be here for you. We can't fix your problems, but we can encourage you in the ways of the Lord. We can't care for you in all the ways that you need, but we can help in the ways that we can. And later, they do help David from Jerusalem. As the story progresses, we find out information, and it's Jonathan and Ahimaaz that actually go and deliver the message to David about what's going on in the city. That's an important part of the people that God puts in our lives. So what can we do as a church to support those others in this valley? I mean, let's be real honest. We would much rather hang out with people that are on the mountain, that are happy, that are a joy to be around. And let's also be honest that that's not everybody. That's not most people. I'm not asking you to put on a happy face for church. I'm not asking you to put on a sad face for church. I'm just saying let's be real with one another, and when we see a need, let's meet it. As the church, as the body of Christ, let's know and be aware of the needs that are there. You say, well, I don't know if I know the needs that are represented by the church family. Well, every single Wednesday, we put out a prayer sheet And not everybody has anything by their names. Things are going well enough for them. But everything on here is just the needs that are represented by our church body. And if you don't know, it would be great for you to come on a Wednesday night and pray for your church family together, but at least pick up one of these so that when you are praying for the church family throughout the week, that you know what to pray for. So what can we as a church do to support these in the valley? Well, my number 3 is prayer, but I'll just put that at number 1 because I just talked about it. Prayer is so important, praying for your brothers and sisters in this church. But number 2 is guidance. I thought about this. Why would they want to bring the ark out? And one of the things I thought is to inquire of the Lord. David was in the regular habit of, I don't know what to do, and so they would somehow inquire of the ark of the Lord. Maybe he'd bring the Urim and the Thummim, or whatever it's called, and they would bring that out, and maybe they could inquire of the Lord, and maybe they said, this is just really important for you. So now we don't have that. We don't have little stones that we're flipping or, putting our hands on the ark. We don't have that, but we can help people kind of find out the way of the Lord. We can help people discern the will of the Lord. It's been a privilege as a pastor to be able to just ask questions of people and say, well, have you prayed about this? Or can we pray together about this? Can we take some time to fast and pray about decisions you have to make and to discern the mind of the Lord regarding if it's in a valley of decision or if it's just in a valley of like, this is just really hard. I can pray for you, but maybe sometimes there are things where you need to have an answer. And so as a church, can we cultivate that where we say we want to be used by God to remind you of God's will and to pray with you for wisdom? Another thing I think they wanted is just to encourage them, to remind David of God's presence. I think they wanted to bring the Ark of the Covenant to say, listen, just because you sinned and because some of this is even of the consequences of things that you've done, doesn't mean that God isn't there with you. It may be, and it probably will be, that some people in our church will go through valleys that they dug themselves, right? It would be great if Christians only dealt with things that were external. Somebody else did something to me. But let's be real honest. If you're like me, some of the troubles that I'm facing are my fault. And yet, I still need a Christian community who will remind me of God's love and forgiveness and help. So that's important too. I think they wanted to bring the ark out to say, God's not abandoning you. He's with you. Don't think of God as back in Jerusalem. He's with you. Now, David understands that, and he says, I'm hoping God will bring me back. I'm hoping I can see the ark again. We can worship again. But right now, it would be better for you to go back, and I'll just put this in the hands of the Lord. But God sent those people to help. Next, we have the fixer, the one who wants to try to fix things. So, verse 31, one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. Now, you remember we said that Ahithophel was a great godly man. We said last week that even his counsel was like if you inquired at the oracle of God. So he had quite the reputation. He was quite a wise man and probably, except for this point, a godly man. And for different reasons that we talked about last week, he has now aligned himself with Absalom. It was a huge blow to David. He mentions it in the Psalms that we'll look at in the weeks to come. But he mentions this betrayal, how much it hurts. But even more than that, David also realizes that, if Ahithophel and Absalom put their heads together, they're probably going to come up with a plan that is not going to go well for me. And actually, later on, Ahithophel comes up with a pretty good plan. And his advice is great. And if he'd followed it, the story would have gone very, very differently. And David realizes this. So notice in verse 31, he prays. David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Now, what a prayer to pray. Make it so that his advice is bad advice, or turn it some way where you negate the effects of this wise man. And verse 32 says, in answer to that prayer, Hushai, the Archite, shows up. It came to pass that when David was come to the top of the mountain where he worshiped God, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head. Unto whom David, so who's Hushai the Archite? Well, later on we find out he was one of the king's counselors, a wise and godly man, not to the level of Ahithophel, maybe a younger man, but someone who was wise and a counselor. And he says, David, I'm with you. He wants to be like Ittai the Gittite. I'm with you. I'm going to be here for you no matter what. But David says, actually, I just prayed a prayer, and I think you might be the answer to it. So he says in verse 33, if thou passest on with me, then thou shalt be a burden unto me. And I don't think he means that in the worst way. I just think he means, I'm not going to need counsel right now. I'm going to need warriors, and that's not you. Let's be real honest. You're a bookish guy. You counsel, and I appreciate that. But actually, that's what I need from you. So verse 34, but if thou return to the city and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, as I have been by thy father's servant hitherto, so will I now also be thy servant. Then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. And hast thou not there with thee Zadok and Abiathar the priests? Therefore it shall be that what things soever thou shalt hear out of the king's house, then thou shalt tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Behold, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them ye shall send unto me everything that you can hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. David gets out just in time. Absalom shows up, and Hushai's there as well. And Hushai now is going to say, King Absalom, I'm here to serve you. We'll look at that interaction later. But now Hushai is going to be there as an answer to prayer. Hey, he can fix one of these problems. He's not an assassin. David's not saying, go kill my son. He's saying, go and make sure that I know what's going on. I have good intel, and see if the Lord would use you to fix this problem of Ahithophel. This is the person, and later on, Hushai's bad advice. It's a great story. We'll look at this, but later on, his bad advice is the undoing of Absalom altogether. So God answers this prayer with Hushai. This is the person who wants to help and fix things. They can't fight with you. He can't bring all the food. He's just one guy, but he can do what he can. He wants to fix something. He wants to do what he can to reconcile the problem that's there. He wants to ask, what can I do? And he'll help in the ways that he can. Now, of course, most of the time, if you Google friends that want to help fix you, that's generally a negative thing. Oh, my friend, all they want to do is fix me. All they ever want to do. No, I'm grateful for friends who have helped fix me, but I think that's generally right. I wouldn't like being friends with someone because they knew, like, well, this guy needs a lot of help. You know, like if we knew that we were that for somebody, that somebody was that for us, they thought of us in that way, you'd be like, well, I don't know how well this is going, It's like, I love seeing my doctor, but like in the office, not outside the office, I don't need him to like come into my house and like, hey, you want to hang out? How's your, can I see your Fitbit? How's your heart rate going? Like, I'm not interested in that. But it's also, again, good to have people that are there to help. Proverbs 27, verse 17, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. I've thought about this. So when we think of being used by God to sharpen someone else, any of you ever done any kind of like sharpening knives or a mace and a sword or something like that? Yeah. Okay, so now generally when you have a knife that you want to be sharper, do you use another sharp knife? No. Generally you're using kind of like a rod or maybe a bar or something like that, right? So what the idea is this, it's one that doesn't have the property of the other, helping that one become more like what it should. So you don't have to be sharp. You don't have to be the same as your friend to be able to help. You are what you are, and God can use that to make the other person better, sharper. Iron sharpeneth iron doesn't mean that you have to be as sharp as a sword or knife. In fact, it's probably better if you're not, because you can be used to help sharpen that other person. And God wants to use us to help others. We can be used by God to heal. We can be used by God to bring some resolution. 2 Corinthians 1, verse 3 puts it this way, blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. Verse 4, the God of all comfort, who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. How can I be a comfort to somebody else? By taking the things that God has done to comfort me and applying those to other people. Are there people in our church that are struggling with their kids? Yep, you can help. You can be a blessing to jump in and say, hey, I know you're struggling with this. Not only am I going to pray with you about this, but I can help fix it. I can give you some advice on what to do. You have people in our church that are struggling in their marriage. Maybe you have had some struggles too, and you've gone through it, and you said, now I can come in alongside this person and help. Someone who's struggling with anxiety. You prone to worry too, but you've gotten some tools from the Lord that you can help this person fix them. You say, well, I'm not a counselor. No, you are. That's the point. Like, you don't have to be a full-blown professional counselor. You know, when people come to me and ask for help, I don't have any credentials except I study and think about the Word of God a lot, and I believe that this has the power to change lives. And if you're a Christian who believes the same thing, guess what? You're a counselor. You can help other people. You can be used by God to bring the salve and the balm of God's Word into someone else's life. You don't have to be extra special. You don't have to be sharp as a sword. You can be as dull as a block that's going to be used to be sharpen someone else. And that's okay because God made you, God gave you the experiences that you have so that you can use it for other people. The fixer, right? You just have to be willing to do it. And some of us are, well, who am I? Well, what do I have to offer? I don't know. But God does, and he wants you to offer it. Because there are people that need help in our church, in our community. It's a wonderful thing that God put us around other people, some of them unbelievers, so that we can be salt and light for them, so that we can help them. Again, I'm not saying have friends where the only thing that you're trying to do is fix them. People can smell that out a mile away. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be ready and be in people's lives so that you can be used by God to help them. If you are in need, it's best to tell your friends how they can help. If that's you and you say, I need fixing, you know what a great thing to do is? To tell them, here's what I need from you. I think most of us would say, oh man, that's great. I don't have to try to figure this out on my own. I just know this is what is going to help you. If you're wanting help, pray about what you can do. If you're wanting to help, you can pray about what you can do to be used by God. Now, we just talked about 3 good people. But let's be real honest, when we're in the valley, those are not the only people that we meet. The next 2 are people that you'd rather not meet, but I'll just tell you, you're going to meet them when you're in the valley. When you're going through the hardship, you're going to meet someone who's an opportunist and who's going to use you. So chapter 16, when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of I know how to say this, okay, Silas? Just because I messed it up here. Let me try this again. Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 summer fruits and a bottle of wine. The king, so he brings all this food, and verse 2, the king said unto Ziba, what meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, the asses be for the king's household to ride on, your little kids, your wives, they don't want to walk. I brought these donkeys, they can sit on them, and it's going to be a lot easier for them. And the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such be faint in the wilderness may drink. Wow, what a guy. This Ziba shows up with all this stuff, and he says, hey, I know it's going to be tough for you, and here are some things that I think will help. I mean, David didn't ask for it. He just freely is giving of himself to help meet the need. Now, probably bears asking, who is Ziba? And you say, I don't actually know. If this was like one of those Sunday night quizzes, I'd probably get it wrong. Well, back in 2 Samuel chapter 6, somewhere in there, David says, I want to do kindness to any of Saul's, kin. So is there anybody left of Saul's household? And he brings in this guy named Ziba. Now Ziba, because Saul and all his sons had died, Ziba was kind of just the caretaker of all of Saul's stuff that was left over, the estate. And he got to use it kind of as he saw fit because there was no other claimant to this. And he says, is there anybody who's left? And Ziba says, yes, Mephibosheth. Now, I wonder personally if Ziba was saying that just to be like, oh, this is great. David's going to kill the rest of them, and I can just keep this for myself. But David instead says, Mephibosheth, you were my best friend's son. I'm giving you all of Saul's stuff. And Ziba, if you and your sons would just caretake that and continue serving him, that would be great. I don't think that went well for Ziba as he left. So here's Ziba, and he sees an opportunity. Here's David, he's leaving. I'm going to take some stuff out to him, and I'm going to be a blessing. and I'm going to be a help, and I'm going to see what I can do to maybe get back into this. So verse number 3, the king said, "And where is thy master's son?" And Ziba said unto the king, "Behold, he abideth at Jerusalem." Mephibosheth, he couldn't come. Well, okay, he's lame, which means his legs don't work. He's not just lame. His legs don't work. So he can't come unless somebody comes with him. But here's what Ziba says. So he's still back at Jerusalem, which would make sense, except Ziba adds this. "For he said, Today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father." Now, what a dumb thing to think if he actually thought this, because first of all, Absalom's not going to be like, "Oh yeah, I did all this for you, Mephibosheth." Second of all, he can't use his feet. People don't want kings that are lame in that way, and so this was never going to happen. But I don't think Mephibosheth actually believes this, because later on, Mephibosheth, as David's coming in, he gets somebody to put him on a donkey, and he goes out, and he hasn't shaved or cleaned himself or anything since David left. And so remember, Mephibosheth was eating at the king's table. He loved the kindness that David, and so I don't think that I don't think that this was true. I think Ziba's lying. I think this is an opportunity for him to say, a bad situation that I can make better for myself. So he lies about Mephibosheth, and in verse number 4, then the king said to Ziba, "Behold, thine are all that pertaineth unto Mephibosheth." And Ziba said, "I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my lord, O king." So he is what's the word? Weasel. That's it. He's a weasel. He came in and said, I'm going to exploit this weakness in David. And David is not really in the mood for making a lot of decisions. He's probably pretty miffed, especially at Mephibosheth. After all I did for that guy, can't even walk around, and I've been letting him eat at my table, and now he thinks he's, forget this. Ziba, you get everything. It's all yours again. And Mephibosheth is going to have to figure out something else. There are some, I'm sorry to say, that just want to take advantage of you when you're in the valley. You're having trouble with somebody, and then they come out and they say, "I never liked them. I never thought that was a good idea," after the fact, right? They're two-faced about others. They're never genuine. Or they pretend to be your friend if there's something they can get. Proverbs 19 verse number 6 says, "Every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts." Oh yeah, you got stuff? Of course you're going to have friends. Of course you're going to have people that want to be around you, because everyone loves a giver. And so if there's something to be obtained, you're going to have a lot of friends. But, asterisk, not really. Not real friends. They only show up when there's drama. They thrive when you aren't getting along with other people or when you're in trouble. They want to be maybe the savior. They want to be the wise person. Do you have people like this in your life? They only show up when they just love it when you're fighting with somebody else. Ooh, drama. Oh, let's talk about this, and kind of promote themselves. We all know people like that. And if you don't have friends. Okay? Because those people are going to be in your lives. They just are. Christians need to show genuine love, not pragmatic love. Not what can I get out of this, but just a genuine care for others. The phrase is this: love people, use things. Not love things, use people. People are not objects to be used. They are people to be loved. They are image bearers that God cares about, and we are to treat them as such. At the same time, and this is something that we often struggle with, we as Christians ought to be willing to be used by others. I will not be the one who uses other people, and I'm grateful when other people in my life can help me. I'm glad for that, but I never want it to be about the help that I can get from them as a condition of my friendship. I want to be someone who is willing to be used and spent, and that's not an easy thing, but Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 15, "I will very gladly spend and be spent for you. Though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." He understands I'm going to give, and not get a lot back, and that's okay. And that's the way Christians are called to be. That's the way Christ was for us. So avoid this person if you can, unless in love God calls you to minister to them. Just know that they're going to be there in your life, and don't be that friend. The last person you're probably going to meet is what we might call the knife twister or the malicious. And this is a guy named Shimei. So here's David. He's leaving. He's at a real low point. And here comes Shimei. Verse 5. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came. He cast stones at David, and all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And thus said Shimei when he cursed, Come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. I picture this like David's in this valley, right? He's going, and there's like canyons on either side. And here's Shimei, and he just picks up sand and throws it at them, and dirt and rocks. He's just pelting them and just screaming, this is all your fault. You're a bloody man. This is all that's come because of all that you did to Saul, which was nothing. But he's got this idea, and he just, and he doesn't just like stay in one spot. He's like following him along. As he's going, miles and miles of just, yeah, you deserve this. You get what you're calling. This is all going to end badly for you. And I'm happy to see it. Every little curse he can think of. And here's David just riding. This is how I picture it, right? And just dirt and dust. And everyone's just kind of like, I don't need this right now. Nobody does. Here it is, though. You have people in your life that when you are in a valley, that's when they feel like they need to kick you while you're down. They need to twist. The knife is in, and they need to come up and twist it. Maybe they want some kind of sense of superiority. I'm better than you. This had never happened to me. Maybe they've been looking for an opportunity to make you feel it. Now that you're down, this is the moment I have to come in and make it worse for you. I don't really understand this mentality because it certainly isn't Christian. But it's there. It's there with people. If you're down, they want to make sure that you stay down and go even further. What can be our response? Well, there's a couple that are offered. Verse number 9, then said Abishai. Now remember Abishai, he was the one that was like, hey, Saul's here. He's asleep, and here's a spear. Let's just end this right now. So Abishai hasn't changed much. Verse number 9, Abishai said unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. It's just, I've got one option. I don't really have a lot of cards to play, but the taking off the head, that's the thing he was known for. This could be really easy for us, David. I just go over there and he'll stop talking. We'll just take care of this, right? And David gives the other option. So again, you can't just cut everyone off. You can't just cut those people off. And it would be wrong of you to try to go and be like, oh yeah, well, whatever you did to me, that's what I'm going to do to you too. That never goes well, even though that's our first instinct. Oh yeah? Oh yeah, you want to play this game? You want to insult me? You want to come at me? Fine, let's play. That's an instinct in all of us. Some of us. Maybe most of us. At least wanting someone else to do it, right? But David has the right attitude, I think. Verse number 10, the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? Like, please stop with the killing. There's a time for that, but not right now. So let him curse. And this is interesting, listen, because the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Now, whether that's true or not, David's at least allowing that God has allowed it to happen. God isn't stopping him. He's cursing the king. You're not supposed to do that, but God could stop him if he wanted to. Let him curse, right? Who shall then say, wherefore hast thou done so? And David said to Abishai and all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. Now, verse 12, it may be that the Lord will look on mine affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went by, Shimei went along on the hillside over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. Eventually Shimei is left in the dust, and David says, let him curse. Maybe God will look at this and say, David, you did the right thing. You endured that, and so I'm going to reward you for that. we are called to endure through those things. I'm sorry when that happens, when you're in the valley and someone comes along and says, I know why this happened, because you're a fool, because God's punishing you. There are people in your life that are going to do that. Let it not come from this church. Let it not be the people in the church that are saying such nonsense. Right? Even if you sin and everything you destroy your life with a sinful mistake, it ought to be the church that says, let us restore you in a spirit of meekness. Right? Not excusing sin, but for the repentant coming around them and saying, we love you and we want you to rebuild. Not, how's it feel to be down there? Right? This is what we are called to do. Listen, we have valleys, we have trials, we encounter others, and let us be those who are used by God to help and be a blessing and commit to being that for somebody else.